Hello, and welcome back to Now You Know. The mission of our broadcast is to inform our viewers about topics that can help them in their everyday lives. This broadcast is hosted by the Cedric Smith sales team. Meet the team. I'm here with
Cedric Smith,
Giovanna Simmons,
and me, Terrence Mason. Today we're going to be having an informative sit-down with the CEO of BRI, Tim Foley.
So, Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are we meeting today?
All right. So first of all, thank you so much for having me be here. I'm Tim Foley. I'm the CEO and the Executive Vice President for the Building and Realty Institute, which is a real estate trade association based here in Westchester that next year will actually be celebrating our 80th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
Congratulations. So what do they do there? What do they do there?
So what we do is we have members who represent the broadest possible spectrum of real estate here within the county. On the building side, that means we have businesses and organizations involved in home building, development, remodeling, building affordable housing, building multifamily, mixed use, you name it, and then contractors, and that's the building side. Then on the realty side, we have members who own or operate existing multifamilies. So that includes landlords, that includes co-op and condo boards, that includes property managing agents. And then we have a whole bunch of businesses who just want to do business with all of the above. And that includes the professional class, so bankers and lawyers and engineers and architects. But that also includes specialty subcontractors, like those who only work on HVAC or those who work on mold remediation and fire damage. We had a guy who was a member who called himself the closet guy. You can kind of guess what he did. And we pull everybody together to do advocacy on behalf of our members, on behalf of the industry. We do a ton of education and programming and networking to make those connections that can help people grow their business.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Wow. Seems like you guys do a lot. You must be busy. How do you become a member?
So it's a dues organization. So an organization who wants to sign up can go to our website, buildersinstitute.org, or they can call us directly, or they can get some type of an introduction. You basically just put in an application and pay a yearly dues based on the type of business that you have, and that's it. Then the business itself is the member, which means that oftentimes we have businesses who will bring multiple people to different events, or who will mix and match. One person comes to the event that's specific to landlords, one person comes to the networking event. All of that is fine. It's actually a really good deal, particularly because there are a lot of member benefits that come along with it as well.
Yeah, that's true. I've been to some, and you get a nice meal, and
Yep.
and you meet many people from many different backgrounds. So that's really good. So has anyone ever told you that their business has benefited from this? Has it grown from this? What would you say are some experiences of that?
Oh, all the time. And that includes folks who are just trying to break into the industry or who are just trying to establish themselves. All of a sudden, by the second, third, fourth meeting that they come to, most of which are included in their dues, so they're not paying each time, they've made enough connections that they've gotten this type of business, or they've made a new client with a co-op, or they've got a property managing agent who's now coming to them on a pretty regular basis. We hear that story all the time.
That's great. That's great.
So tell us a little bit about how you guys do anything with affordable housing and how the shortage.
So the one connective tissue between all of those different types of businesses that are members is housing. So the BRI is lightning focused on housing, and particularly what that means now is dealing with the housing shortage. So we know from the 2019 Westchester County Affordable Housing Needs Assessment that the county put out, and it's a rigorous report. We actually, at that point, needed 11,703 new units that had not yet been constructed of affordable housing just to meet what was the present day demand then.
Wow.
Well, think of everything that's happened since then, right? We've had COVID, we've had a big migration of people out of New York City and up into the suburbs. Westchester County has actually grown in population, where we are over 1 million residents now. Then you get interest rates, which are actually causing a lot of people who would naturally think about moving to stay in their homes, because whatever they're going to move to may be a worse financial deal than wherever they're staying. But that means it's not freeing up homes for some of the folks who are coming in from New York City or for their job or returning home to the community that they grew up in now that they have a family of their own. So all of those trends that were identified in 2019 are even worse now. Luckily, also in Westchester County, through some of our members and through some of our advocacy work, and also just people acknowledging there's a problem. There's a lot of progress. There's a lot of buildings that are going up in a lot of different places, not just the cities like Yonkers and New Rochelle and White Plains. We're seeing actually a lot of thoughtful development that doesn't ruin the character of the neighborhoods in places like Pelham, in places like Pleasantville, and places like Croton-on-Hudson. There's still a lot of communities that haven't quite figured out how they're going to be part of the solution, but it's really encouraging to see a lot of villages and towns step up.
Yeah, but a lot of the buildings are going up. It's so unaffordable for most people. So what are they doing anything about that? Because most of my clients, I'm a realtor, of course, most of my clients, they can't afford it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And unfortunately, although we have been able to add quite a lot to our housing shortage, it's a drop in the bucket based on what the gap that we already had.
Yeah.
So what that means is that some of the effects that you would naturally see of more inventory, this story is very mixed. It's not mixed in one place. The place that is by far building the most right now is New Rochelle. New Rochelle is on track to add 7,000 units, and there was a big profile on them in the Wall Street Journal because they are the one municipality in Westchester County, and in fact the one municipality in the greater New York City area where rents in average have gone down.
Wow.
Nowhere else is that happening.
Yeah.
Right? So supply and demand does work. The problem is we just need a lot more supply to get to that point.
That's why, you know what, everyone is talking about New Rochelle too. I just was in the car with some friends on Wednesday and they were talking about all the construction in New Rochelle and how there's so many buildings going up. I don't know, I feel like they may surpass White Plains. I'm not sure, but especially if that's the case, if the rents are actually less going down, that's a beautiful thing.
Well, and the other thing is that there were a lot of skeptics when New Rochelle started this project about 10 years ago. They're like, are they going to get enough people? Are those buildings going to be filled? Those buildings are filled. They're looking at 95, 96% occupancy on the stuff that has opened recently. So I think they proved their concept pretty well.
Wow, that's awesome.
A few years ago, the BRI helped found an organization called Welcome Home White Plains campaign. Would you like to elaborate on what that is and what it's doing for the housing issue?
Absolutely. It's the Welcome Home Westchester campaign because it's a county-wide effort. And really what that is it's a multi-stakeholder campaign. So we have organizations like ours that are involved in the production of housing. We have those who are from the business industry like Westchester County Association and Nonprofit Westchester. We have academics and think tanks involved. We have some faith leaders involved. We have some climate activists involved because actually a lot of climate activists understand that part of the way that we wrap our arms around the climate problem is by building more environmentally friendly housing, which means infill, which means multifamily, which means the type of housing that is still very hard to get off the ground in some communities. And the whole intent is have a new conversation based on the need to address the housing shortage. Sort of our watchwords are two phrases that we say over and over and over again. Number one is that housing shortage like we're dealing with was not the fault of any one individual municipality. It was basically everybody contributing together for about 30 years to get us into the hole we're in. So we think that everybody has a responsibility to be part of the housing solution in whatever way they can. And then the second thing that we say is that not everybody needs to do the same thing. I think this is a big misconception when we talk about housing. Not everybody has to build a 10-story building. That may not make sense. It may make more sense to look at accessory dwelling units. It may make more sense to take a look at senior housing. It may be better to add a floor on top of the shops downtown so that you can actually put some housing in there. There are a lot of different ways of tackling this. So not everybody needs to do the same thing, but everybody ought to do something.
Yeah, I like the way that sounds. And so speaking of the Welcome Home campaign, you mentioned that you're in the middle of a campaign, an initiative called 5 and 25. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So we always like to think that there's nothing as contagious as an example. So we looked at there are about 12 communities within Westchester County that have actually moved the needle appreciably in terms of getting new housing built without necessarily affecting the character of their community. So we looked at, well, what are they doing? And are there some examples in there that we can hold up that other municipalities ought to take a look at? So we highlighted 5 of the policies that are actually working right here in different communities in Westchester. Number one, there are plenty that are working on what's called a housing action plan or a comprehensive plan review. That's even better, but not a lot of communities want to go through that process. Others are just identifying how they can build new housing where it makes sense to. Number two, we've talked a lot about accessory dwelling units and transit-oriented developments. That's also something that they've been talking about at the state level. Number three, we've looked at an environmental fast track, where essentially there are some places where if you know that what's getting built is environmentally friendly, it doesn't and ought not to go through as long an environmental review or as uncertain an environmental review as a lot of these projects take. Number four, we've talked about training for land use boards, making sure that they understand not just the specifics of like, what is a wetland and how do you zone for it and so on and so forth, all of which is important to their jobs, but they're also understanding the housing policy issues that are happening right now. And then the last one is the state has been very proactive in terms of putting out a couple of different programs for cities, towns, and villages. I'm happy to report that Westchester County has the second highest number of communities that are participating in the Pro Housing Communities program, which means if you agree to grow by a certain amount per year, you get access to various grants. You get a higher number of points on your application to the state for funding, for infrastructure, for roads, for revitalizing your downtown. And we didn't say do all five. We said pick one and spend this year exploring how it might work within your municipality. And that's the idea behind the campaign.
That sounds good.
Yeah, that does.
Yeah, that sounds good. So you to be a member, do you have to be in real estate, or you could be in any?
So as I mentioned, we do have some folks who want to do business within real estate, may not be a real estate business themselves. So that we have, for example, some technology companies who are working on a couple of different solutions, but one of their targets is real estate. And what they're trying to do is build apps that make the life of someone who's a home builder better, make the life of someone who's a landlord better. So we do get those types of members in. And there's a very big umbrella in terms of the folks who become members of the BRI. And actually, it's fundamentally, at the end of the day, all about finding the folks who are going to help you grow your business. A lot of folks are involved in the advocacy work that we do, and that's great. But a lot of folks are just there to learn something. We do a ton of education programming, not just upon our advocacy issues, but trying to look ahead about the issues that people are dealing with right now. Some people like our trainings that we offer that are specific to members, and they want to get involved because of that. Others just want to show up for a networking event, for a golf outing, for a holiday party, and find folks that they can help build a relationship with over time. There are a lot of reasons to join, and we have people who join for one reason or another.
Now, for the training, do they pay separately for that, or that's free?
For most of the trainings that we offer are free for members.
Okay.
Yeah, I've noticed that. What's really nice is that you select topics that will inform the members on different things. Like, it doesn't have to be, so it's networking, enjoying the company, and learning.
Yeah.
So it's a mix of those things.
And our themes for a lot of our membership meetings, which, by the way, if you're a non-member and you just want to come to one and check it out, give us a call. We'll probably get you in as a guest. But the benefit for our members is the first hour of it is just a networking reception. So you can get your networking fill, and if you don't like the topic, you can find your way to the door. But we are trying to be very thoughtful in terms of the types of programs that we are doing. So just in the next month alone, we're going to be covering a topic that I wish we didn't have to cover: how to prepare yourself if there's going to be an ICE raid at your work site. Or if you're going to if you're a landlord and you get an information request from ICE, which you've probably never seen in your life before. What should you be thinking about? Who should you consult? When's it time to talk to your lawyer? We're also doing another program that's on building moratoria, where the village basically says we're just going to shut down all building for the next 6 months or the next 12 months while we figure out this, that, or the other thing. Some issues at play in terms of when that is actually legal and when it's just a way of stifling debate. So we'll get into a good conversation on that. And we have someone coming in to talk about AI for business owners. Everyone knows that this is the technology of the future. it's not very clear what you can be doing as a small business owner to help improve your workflow. So we have a speaker who's coming in on that. And then lastly, we're in October, we'll do a big economic review. The economy is very different and very confusing than when it was about a year ago. So we'll bring in a couple of economists who have one on the pessimistic side, one on the optimistic side, and give people a sense of where things are going.
So are those in person or those Zoom?
Those are, I believe those are all in person. One of them might be in Zoom, but for the most part, most of our meetings are in person.
And where are you located?
So we are at different points throughout the county. So the meeting on ICE will be taking place next week at Harrison Meadows. The meeting on moratorium will be taking place at Hotel MTK in Mount Kisco. The meeting in October, I believe, is taking place at Molinos at Lake Isle. So we try and move around because you get different people when you hold them in different places.
Yeah.
The one on ICE is really good.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I was just like,
you got to figure out how you get that clients.
Yeah, because you need to know those things.
Well, and if I can tell you, the thing that really prompted me on it is there were news reports over the summer in Western New York of roofing companies who would have men out on the job, and the homeowner would call the roofing company and say, where'd everybody go? Are they on break or something? They weren't on break, they had been detained.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Either on the way to the work site or while they were at the work site. So that lit a light bulb over my head that probably a lot of folks have not thought through their contingency plans. They don't know what they would do in that situation. They don't know what to comply with, not to comply with. So it's important to get that out there.
Yeah. How do you select these topics that you speak about?
Most of the topics that come up actually come from our members. So as Cedric knows, we have various boards of directors who represent the different types of membership. So the builders have a board, and the landlords have a board, and the co-op and condo boards have a board, and the folks who are suppliers and service providers have their own. And oftentimes, though, the programs that we do are from questions that we get from the members themselves. They want to know more about this. They want to know more about that. The other thing that we've been doing lately is we've been doing not just based on job industry type, but programs that are based on community. So we launched something called the Hudson Valley Women in Construction. And that's not so much a program like you have a speaker and a panelist and you have some Q&A maybe. That's much more of a discussion group where folks are having conversations at the table about what it is like to be a woman within the industry, how things have gotten better, what types of things need to improve, how there are various programs like MWBE programs, Minority and Women Business Enterprises, how the state is set up to sort of support those, but doesn't always by actually creating inadvertent paperwork problems and other blockages. So that's been a very good program. We have a young professionals in construction group that's going to be meeting sometime in October, the future of the industry. And in some cases, we're happy to say a lot of members of the BRI are multi-generational, meaning that they might have joined, we've been around for 80 years. The grandfather might have joined and then passed the business on to his son and has now passed that on to the next generation.
Grandson.
Who are attending our young professionals in construction event, right? So that's kind of cool about an organization like ours that's been around for so much. You have folks who just formed their business in the past year, and you have folks who have been with us since the 50s.
That's really cool. So the BRI obviously represented a lot of businesses, organizations, and individuals who own or operate existing multifamily buildings. So this includes 25,000 or so apartments that are under the rent stabilization laws. So your organization has been a sounding alarm about how some of those buildings have been in financial distress since at least COVID. Can you explain?
Yeah, absolutely. So in a lot of rent-stabilized building, first of all, to be in a rent-stabilized building, it had to have been built before 1974. So it's a building that's 50 years older or older. The rents are constrained. So there is a process within the county whereby they look at economic data and they look at other factors and then figure out the maximum allowable increase. From our perspective, they ought to be figuring out a balance between what the real costs are and keeping it affordable for the primarily low and middle income people who live there. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Politics can be messy. But one of the biggest things that happened in 2019 is the state changed a lot of the policies with regard to rent-stabilized apartments. Some of those, to be perfectly honest, were good changes that people had been talking about for a long period of time. But a few of them that they changed, it used to be the case that you could reset the rent when it became vacant. And that was supposed to help upkeep apartments where you'd had one tenant for 20 years. Even a good tenant, it's going to be a lot of damage. Floors are going to be scuffed up. Might need to fix the electricity. The appliances are certainly out of date. So being able to increase the rent on nobody in particular because it's vacant would allow you to help the upkeep of that apartment. And they also had two other funding programs for major capital improvements. That's something like you need a new roof, you need a new boiler, something that's building wide, the elevator's out. Or an individual apartment improvement, which again is trying to improve the conditions within the apartment. And again, having a measured rent increase is part of that. In Albany, they changed the way those formulas worked in a way that essentially some of them stopped working. So the Major Capital Improvements Program, we actually did a study on this a couple of years ago. The number of applications for that dropped by 89%. Why? Because it didn't work anymore. You couldn't actually pay off the asset with how much they had constrained that. Individual apartment improvements, someone doing damage to the apartment just by living there, obviously being a good tenant for like 20 or 30 years, which is often the case in some of these apartments, the damage might be $50,000 to $80,000. Originally, it was limited to $15,000 was the most that you could recoup.
Oh, wow.
So people were, instead of fixing the apartment, if they were lucky, were putting on a new coat of paint and saying, this is terrible, but it's what I have to do. In other cases, they found that they couldn't rent the apartment because the repairs were so extensive and they didn't have the money for it. So it's caused a lot of buildings to be in distress, not so much the big ones, but I think one thing that people don't realize is a lot of rent-stabilized apartments are 25 units or fewer. So these are relatively small buildings. A lot of our members might only have a single building that they bought as a retirement investment, some investment. A lot of them are still working to put upkeep into the building. And we actually even have a member right now where her family bought it. They own the building. She works as a nurse, and she's currently subsidizing the building operations because they don't get enough on the rents.
Wow.
With her own nurse's salary. So it's a big source of concern. One of the things when we're dealing with a housing shortage is we don't want apartments falling off the market because that just makes everything worse. We've had a lot of conversations with policymakers about what to do to fix that. We know they made a slight adjustment on individual apartment improvements. That helped some folks, that helped repair some apartments and get them on there. But obviously, I think a lot more work needs to go into these financial formulas in order to make them viable again.
Yeah. I wonder, so the apartments that are being built and they're very expensive, we just took a tour of some of these beautiful new apartments yesterday, Tuesday.
Yes.
And so they're going for 8,000, or more, or less, a little bit less. Does this affect the rental issue that people are having, especially trying to find ones that they can afford?
Yeah, I think that's much more of a symptom than the disease itself, because essentially all of these factors to deal with a rent shortage, people being stuck in place, not enough inventory to go around, is how they're able to demand that type of pricing, right?
Wow.
But one of the things that we have as an advantage in Westchester that they don't necessarily have on, let's say, Long Island or Rockland or some of these other places, is in 22 municipalities within Westchester, they have an ordinance on the books that requires 10% of the units that are built to be affordable. And people always say affordable for whom? So it's actually a mathematical definition. You look at the median income, you look at 80% of the median income, and the rent or whatever housing costs there are can't exceed 30% of someone's income at that level, right? So that we've been able to create thousands of affordable units that way. Yes, 90% of them are market rate, but that cross subsidy is partly how it works. The other thing that we're starting to see, because those ordinances have been around at this point for 10 years or more, we actually are starting to see some municipalities go back and say, let's actually make that lower. So White Plains just did this. They changed it from 80% median income to 60% median income, because it's precisely what you were talking about, that a lot of units were getting built that were not affordable to people who already live there and were struggling with housing costs. This gets you much better to where an average middle income household is.
Okay.
Well, that's good, very good, because if you build a city, you think about it, we need bus drivers, school bus drivers, we need EMT, we need officers and firemen, they can't afford it.
And Westchester County has had an explosion of purely affordable housing getting built as well. So there are some buildings that are affordable all the way through. Unfortunately, what most people don't realize is that only happens with a government subsidy. You can't actually, the cost for building an apartment is about the same, whether it's market rate or whether it's affordable. So you need something to subsidize the difference. And the state has been extremely generous. Westchester County itself has some of the best policies in place to promote affordable housing, including the county has actually quadrupled its investment in affordable housing. That's great, but you're already seeing that the need outstrips even those efforts. So we just have to get more creative about what we're doing.
Yes, that's good. Good.
Thank you so much. I mean, a lot to take in, a lot that you're doing for
the community,
the community and those who live within it. And not only that, but helping professionals to build their businesses. So, I mean, just a lot of good things.
Yes, and then also, like we said, what we say at the end of the show, you'll see his information. So if you want to get in touch with it, you can get in touch with it.
Yeah, the pros are a great meal.
I imagine
it's true. We are famous for our food.
I'm a foodie. Great conversations, leads to build your business, and also informative sessions.
Tim, thanks for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me in, and thanks for everything you guys are doing to help educate the public.
Thank you.
Now you know. Get to it.